Hi boys and girls, this is the video for Monday on just fractions in general. So fractions, that was one of the last things that we did back when we were actually in school all together. So hopefully it's a little more fresh in your mind. But basically I just want to go over the basics first. So we know that when we have a number with the bar and then a number below, that it's probably a fraction. And so those parts of the fractions are a numerator and a denominator. So a numerator, what is a numerator? So a numerator is how many equal parts do you have? And the important part of this is equal parts and that you have. Whereas the denominator is how many equal parts is the whole divided into. So if we look over here, the example has 3 as the numerator and 4 as the denominator. So 3 is how many equal parts do you have? So you can see that there's 3 slices of the pizza that haven't been eaten. And then 4 is how many equal parts is the whole divided into. So the whole pizza was divided into 4 parts. So basically they have 3 left of the 4 total. And so that's just for this example. But maybe if the question was, what is the fraction of the number of, or the pizza slices that were already eaten? Then it would be 1/4, because 1 is the number that they're talking about, or how many that you have, so you have eaten 1. And then 4 would be still the denominator, because it's the number of equal parts that the whole is divided into. So really that depends on the question. And something really important to look out for, this one is in a pizza form, but others might be just shaded, either a shape cut up into pieces and shaded or non-shaded. And sometimes the questions are going to say, what is the fraction of the shaded portion? Or what are the fractions of the unshaded portion? So that's really important to look out for, because with this pizza, you might just assume they're talking about what you have left, but maybe they want to know what you've eaten already. So just be on the lookout for that. And then down here, there's a couple more examples that are a little different. So this one's 1/3. So you can see the one piece that you have out of the total 3 pieces. And that piece is counted with the total, because you're basically looking at the whole shape and how many total are they divided into. And the important part for both numerator and denominator for fractions is that it's equal pieces. Because say, for example, we had I'll do it on the back. Say we had a circle, and the pizzas looked something, the slices looked something like that, and you shaded one of them, and you said, well, you had one of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It wouldn't count, because none of these pieces are equal. So if you say 1/7, that's not an accurate representation of the actual fraction, because it has to be based off equal parts. And the funny thing with fractions is that as the denominator gets larger, the pieces actually get smaller. So if you look at the third and the fourths, the thirds are bigger. Even though 4 is a larger number, or larger value, I guess, the thirds have bigger slices. And a good way to remember that is to think of if you were to have a birthday party with a big cake, the more friends you bring to the party, the less cake you get, because the more friends that you have there, the more slices that you have to divide the cake into. So because there would be more slices, then they have to be a little smaller for everyone to have a slice. So if you can't remember that, just think, or if you can't remember whether they're larger or smaller with a certain number, just think, if you invite more friends to the party, you have less cake. So if you look over at the eighths, this person has 8 people that need to split a pizza. They have much smaller slices than the 3 people who are splitting a pizza. So that's a really great example to look at the 2. And here the numerator is 5, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slices of the total 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's broken up into 8 total equal parts, and 5 of them are not eaten. And then over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 is the denominator because it's 5 total, and then 1, 2 is the numerator. Okay? So that's just a little reminder about numerator and denominator. So now we're going to look at the shaded area. So again, how I was just talking about shaded versus unshaded. So here at the top, it says, what is the fraction of the shaded area? And fractions come pretty easy and pretty quick to a lot of us. So we're very quick to say, well, 1, 2, 3 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 3 out of 12. And some of them we're even better at if we see a half or 1 out of 3. It's very easy to see right off the bat. So just make sure that you're looking to see what the question's asking, because if they're talking about the unshaded area, then this fraction would look a lot different than 3/12. So on this particular worksheet, we're going to focus on just the shaded area. So again, down here, we count our shaded pieces first to find our numerator. So 1, 2, 2 pieces of the total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2/6. Number 3, we have 1, 2 pieces of the total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 2/5. So you can see how all of these look a little different. And I mean, we see all sorts of different shapes here. You can see these ones don't have circular sides, whereas the circle does. This one is a rectangle. There might be some squares. But one thing that you will notice consistently throughout the entire thing is that they're all equal pieces. That's how you know that you're finding a proper fraction, because all of them are cut perfectly and equal. So that's how we know how to find these fractions correctly. So down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the total 7, 8, 9. So you can see that I kind of use the strategy of putting a little dot in each one as I count, and that's just because I think that it's easier to keep track of which ones I've been counting. It's just the strategy I use, and this should come quick to you all. I'll kind of skip around here. We have 1, 2, 3 of the total 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 3/10. So finding the shaded area is pretty simple. Hopefully that comes quick to you all. But this is a little different. So this says shade the figure with the indicated fraction. So they gave us fractions on each of these lines, and they want us to shade that within each of the different shapes. So let's start with the first one. It says 3/6, which might be putting an alarm off to all of you because it's also equal to half, which we'll talk more with equivalent fractions, but hopefully that kind of has a bell that goes off in your head from what we learned in class. But so we're shading 3 of the total 6 pieces. So 1, 2, 3 of the total 4, 5, 6. So we're gonna shade these first 3. You can see that that fills up half this circle. So that's how you shade 3/6. All right, then down here it says 6/10. So we're gonna shade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Of the total 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 pieces there. And then over here, we'll kind of skip around 1/3, 1 of the total 3. And then down here, 2 of the total 10. So 1, 2, and you can just check 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is one of the easier parts of fractions that we worked a lot with towards the beginning of fractions because it's kind of the simple part of it. But just make sure that, again, you're making sure that you're solving for the right part, whether it's shaded or non-shaded, and that should come quickly to all of you. And then this is a little different. So fractions on a number line. So it says for each number line below, determine which fraction belongs in the box. So we had a really great example used by one of our students where they said that they think of it as a ruler because 0 doesn't really have a value, but it's still there labeled at the beginning of the ruler, and then 1. So this could be 1 inch, 1 centimeter, but it's one whole. So in a number line, usually you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to infinity. And what we're looking at is less than 1 until we get into fractions greater than 1, which are later on. But for now, we're just focusing on between that 0 and that 1. So none of these values could be anything greater than 1 or less than 0. So think of that ruler pretend you took the 0 to 1 inch and zoomed it way large so that you can see it. And so there should be total equal parts. It's the same thing as the shapes where they have to be equal parts. But with this one, it has to be equal pieces of the number line. So you'll see that in all of the number lines, they're broken up perfectly equal so that you can find the fractions for it. So the first thing that you have to do is find the total number of pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 total, and we're at 1, 2, 3. So 3/4. And that's the way I do it. I like to find the denominator first when I'm working with a number line, just so I can kind of feel out how many pieces I'm going to have. But it doesn't really matter if you want to find the numerator first, that's fine too. And so remember, when I was counting, I didn't start at 0 because this is 0. And then we go 1, 2, 3 of the total 4. And so this is all between 0 and 1. So if I wanted to label the rest, this would be 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 1, which is also equal to 4/4. So that's how that number line would look. And then so here, we start here at 0, and then there's 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 7 total pieces, and the box is here at 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4/7. And again, if I wanted to label my whole number line, I could do 1/7, 2/7, 3/7, 4/7, 5/7, 6/7, and 1, which is also equal to 7/7. So it's kind of tricky on a number line, but you have to just kind of pretend that it's a shape, or say it's a pizza, and there are 4/7 left of the total 7/7, or the total whole pizza. So then again, down here, we have 1, 2, 3 total pieces, and we're at 1, 2. So 2/3. This would be 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. And down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would be our denominator, and 1, 2, 3. 3/6, or half, and we're actually perfectly at half. So think of something as being half an inch long, or half a centimeter. So we're right at the halfway mark, and 3 is half a sixth, so we're halfway there. And then this one, 1, 2. So out of 2 and 1, our box is at 1/2, which is also, you can see it's lined perfectly right there with 3/6. And number lines are great to see kind of like which fraction is larger or smaller than another. So again, we'll talk about this later, but just as a good visual, you can see that half and 3/6 are equal. They're both less than 2/3, 4/7, and 3/4, because if you were to kind of draw a straight line up, you'll see that they're towards the 0 and not as close to the 1, whereas it looks like 3/4 is greater than 4/7, and 2/3 is greater as well. But the thing that's also a little tricky here is that you kind of have to look at where your rulers or number line starts, because the 0 starts here, but then it starts over here, then it goes back, and it's up here. So that makes it a little tricky, but at least for these ones down here, you can kind of compare because they're perfectly lined up. But those are just a few things to look out for when you're focusing on fractions with a number line. And then a little more with fractions on a number line. So this paper is kind of tricky to see. Hopefully you guys can still see it in the video, but it says name the numerator and denominator for each fraction. Then plot the fraction on the number line below. So this actually says 4/6. It looks like this. I don't know how well you can see. So it wants us to say what the numerator is, the denominator is, and then find it on our own on the number line. So the numerator would be 4, because that's the number at the top. The denominator is 6. And then if we look down here, we should have 6 total parts since that's the denominator, but let's check. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we want to mark where this would be at 4/6. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'd be right here. We'll do a few more. This one says 5/6. So our numerator would be 5. Our denominator would be 6. So we should again have 6 total parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And our numerator is going to be at the 5 mark. So if we wanted to label this whole number line, we would do 1/6, 2/6, 3/6, which is also half, 4/6, 5/6, it's kind of squeezed in there. And then 1 is also 6/6. So that's kind of messy, but hopefully you guys can see that on your video. Over here it says 2/3. Our numerator would be 2. Our denominator would be 3. So we have 1, 2, 3 total parts, and we want to mark it at 2/3. Moving on down here, we have 5/8. So again, these are eighths. That's a higher number. More friends at the birthday party, which means we're going to have smaller slices. So if you look at the eighths compared to the thirds, you can see the thirds are much bigger chunks there than the eighths. So we're finding 5/8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 5 of the total 8. 5/8. Over here we have 3/4. So our numerator would be 3. Our denominator would be 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 total pieces. And our numerator would be here at 3 for 3/4. Our last one is 4/8. Our numerator is 4, the number at the top. Our denominator is 8, our number at the bottom, so 8 total pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And our numerator, this fraction would be at 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, I was just adding up first to make sure that there were 8 total pieces. So 4/8. So that's kind of how you would take a number and then plot it on the number line. And your fraction worksheet today is going to be all about first shapes and shading and figuring out how much is what on, or how much is what fraction on a shape, just kind of what we did here. I gave a few examples and kind of like what we did down here with shading. And then you're going to move into the number lines. So if you need to, go ahead and take notes on what numerator and denominator are, just so that you can kind of have that in the back of your head while moving through with fractions. And you guys should do great. Have a great day.